Hi everyone, and welcome to my stop on the #TinyTeamUnderthesea hop. Today's hop is sponsored by 7 Kids Craft Store, and all of the designers are featuring a mermaid digital image which is available in her store. She does carry other brands like Lawn Fawn, Doodlebug, Whimsy Stamps, and Catherine Puller Designs, just to name a few. So be sure to check out her shop linked down below. I also want to mention that Kelly, who is the owner of 7 Kids Craft, has generously offered a 20% code to all of the hoppers and those watching until July 19th. I will have all of that information listed down below, so be sure to check that out. Okay, so on to my overview of how I put this card together and created my scene using the digital images. I have Microsoft Word open, and the first thing I did was to insert a shape, and then I chose the rectangle option and sized it to 3.5 by 8.5. This is the size of the die that I plan to use, so that's why I chose that particular option. Now the outline of that rectangle is meant to be only as a guide to kind of help me size my digital images and visualize the end result. You don't have to go through this, but this is the way that works for me. Next, I'm adding in my images, and I have all of the images I plan to use open as a JPEG, and then I copy and paste it right into my document. There are many ways to create with digital images, but this is just the way that works for me. To resize my image, I find it easier just to grab the resize points that are around the images and just move them up or down according to what I need. And the last thing that I want to show you after I add in the rock, I want this rock to be in the background of the mermaid, and all I do for that is I choose the text wrap option, and I choose to set it behind the text. So now it looks like my mermaid is sitting on top of the rock in my little scene. So after I finished creating my scene, I printed it once on regular copy paper, which I will use to cut and make a mask out of. And I also printed another copy onto a piece of Nina Silver White 80-pound cardstock, and that will be my card panel. I'm just using my Cutter Bee scissors to quickly cut around those images, and then I can use some liquid adhesive to add to the back to create my masks. So I have all of my images fussy cut, and I am using the Zig 2-way glue pen to add glue to the back of the images. One of the reasons why I love using this glue is because of its dual action. If you use this immediately after applying adhesive, it is a permanent bond. If you allow the glue to dry before adhering it to like another component, then the bond is temporary. I also really love this pen because the tip allows you to get into those tiny small spaces so that I can evenly apply a coat of glue on the back. You do want to leave this off to the side to dry for at least a half an hour so that the bond becomes temporary, and that will allow you to easily remove the masks off of your main images. So here's the end result. I have my scene on the panel that I would color, and I'm just adding in my paper masks over the images so that I can do some ink blending. And as you can see, I can easily remove the mask off of that panel and adjust it as I need it. For my underwater scene, I'm creating some layers of waves by inking the background. I'm using a stencil and I have it positioned at the bottom of the panel to ink up the bottom of the ocean first. And for that, I'm using Antique Linen Distress ink. I'm just applying it with a finger dauber so that I can get into those tiny spaces. After I finish applying one ink, I do clean off my stencil with a dry paper towel, just so not to get any ink transferred up higher onto my scene. So here I'm starting to create the waves, and I've lined up the stencil, and I'm starting with Wilted Violet Distress ink. I'm kind of carefully blending that over the mask so as not to peel up and get any ink on my images. And then I'll continue building that color until I'm happy with the outcome. I've rotated my stencil and shifted it up, and then I'm continuing to ink blend with Shaded Lilac Distress ink. I did clean the stencil in between the colors, again, just so I don't get any transferred up higher. So after the purple layers, I'm adding the blue layers in my scene, and the first color I'm using is Mermaid Lagoon. And I do kind of wish I would have had a little more purple in my scene, but it is what it is. So after Mermaid Lagoon, I'm again shifting my stencil up and I'm rotating it. And then I'm coming in with Salty Ocean Distress ink to blend that out. Again, I am going kind of carefully over those masks, only because I don't want them to shift and get any ink underneath. And then finally, to finish off the ink blending in my scene, I am using Tumble Glass Distress ink and blending that almost to the top of my card. I am leaving just a little bit of white, so and the reason is so that I don't cover my sentiment that's printed at the top of that panel. I spritzed my panel with some water and then blotted it dry with a paper towel just to create a little bit of texture. And then here I'm going in with some watered down acrylic paint and a small watercolor brush. And I'm just splattering the background. I do have those masks in place so that I won't get any of that paint onto my images that I plan to color. And then finally, I'm just adding a little bit of black splatters with some watered down black acrylic paint. So here's my scene card, other than the coloring, kind of completed. And I'm carefully removing the masks with my craft pick because I don't want the paint to leak through to the printed image, and I also need to be cautious here because I don't want any of that paint to smear as it is still wet. So my favorite part of doing these one layer scene cards is removing the masks and then jump right into the Copic coloring. In the interest of time, I'm sharing just some of the coloring in this video, but I will have all of the combinations that I used and some up-close photos over on my blog, which I will link to down below. So for this mermaid's skin, I have the caps of the markers I'm using over on the side of my screen, and I'm beginning with an E13 to map out the shadows around her face and underneath her hairline. Then I can come in with an E11 and blend that out further into the image. And I'm making sure that where E11 ends, I'm going over that several times with my E11 just to blend out any harsh lines. Then I can come in with an E00 to blend it out just a little bit more and reserve the majority of the image for the highlight, which is my E000. I'm giving her some rosy cheeks with an R20, and then I would just blend that out with an E000 to remove any of the harsh lines. For her body, it's just so tiny. I added E13 to for the shading and then blended that out with an E00. And now I'm moving on to her tail. I'm using some blue-green family markers. I'm starting out by first laying down my lightest shade just to wet the paper. And then I'm going in with my darkest color, which is BG49. And I'm just adding that right around the edges of her tail to give it a little bit of shading. And I partially go down into the fin with that lighter shade and reserve half of that fin for the second color. Once I've added the shading, I go in with the BG45 to blend that out, and then I finish everything off with the BG 0000. I did go over this image twice to deepen the shadow, and I do typically go over all of my images 2 or 3 times just so that I get a really smooth blend and transition between the colors. For the bottom part of her fin, I'm using some RV markers, and I'm just flicking in a couple of the shades. I'm going in with my darkest, which is RV66 at the tip of her fin, and then I'm blending that out with an RV04 and finishing everything off with RV10. There is my little seahorse sitting behind that seagrass, and I'm using some yellows to color him in as kind of a golden color. I've added a YR18 over the artist drawn lines, and then I am blending that out with a Y35. And these two colors really don't easily blend, but once I come in with a Y11 and I do one swipe over the complete image, it seems to blend out and gives me that golden look that I'm going for. For the baby mermaid, I've colored her using the same skin color as the other mermaid, and I'm just going to finish coloring her tail in. I'm using some RV family markers for the top of her tail, and I'm going over the scales with an RV66, and then I come in and blend that out with an RV02, and again, the two colors don't particularly blend well, but once I apply an RV10 and blend out the entire thing, it seems to just blend out seamlessly. Her little tail is going to be a golden color, just like the seahorse, and I've started out by adding my lightest shade, which is Y11, across the entire fin. And then I'm coming in with a Y35 and adding just a little bit of shading towards like the middle of the fin. And then I will come in and do some flicking with my darkest shade, which is YR18, to create that golden look. And then I do go ahead and blend out the YR18 with Y35 and finish everything off with Y11. So again, in the interest of time and keeping this video at somewhat of a normal viewing capacity, I've skipped around on the coloring and just hit some of the main points, but I do have all of the color combinations listed on my blog, which I will link to down below in case you're interested in checking that out. To finish this card off, I'm using a Slimline stitch die to die cut the panel to an 8.5 by 3.5 card front. So here I was not happy with how that ink blending finished off, so I'm just grabbing my stencil and that lightest shade of distress ink that I used, and I'm just going to add another little wave to the top of my panel. I am grabbing a finger dauber just to help me kind of get into that small space, and then I will apply tumbled glass distress ink at the top of that. I have a black piece of cardstock that I've cut slightly larger than the front panel, and I'm going to adhere these two together just to give a little bit of a finishing edge to my card. And then I decided that the front panel needed to be popped up just a little bit, and so I am grabbing my fun foam and trimming it up to attach it to the back of the front panel, and then I can attach that to a white card base. And that is my completed card. I want to thank you for hopping along and supporting the hashtag teamtinyunderthesea hop. Don't forget to check out the description below for all of the details regarding our sponsor, as well as the shopping discount code for Kelly's shop. As always, thank you so much for your comments and your likes. I truly appreciate all of your support. If you're new here and you like the content you've seen, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.